My husband didn't say a word when I told him what my mother-in-law had done. He just sat very still at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around his coffee mug, staring at the number on my laptop screen. $84,200. Gone. And she had done it in 11 days. That was 8 months ago. What happened after is the part I still have to remind myself was real. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that I'm 31. I work as a paralegal at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, Ohio. And 3 years ago, I married the best man I've ever known. His name is Trevor. He's a structural engineer, steady and quiet, and the kind of person who replaces your windshield wipers before a storm without being asked. We had been saving for 4 years to buy our first home. Not aggressively, not desperately. Just steadily, the way you do when you're two people who grew up watching their parents struggle and decided early that they wouldn't. We had a joint savings account and a shared spreadsheet. Every Friday, I updated it. Trevor would glance at it over my shoulder and say something like, "We're getting there," and then go make dinner. That was our life. Quiet, careful, building something real. His mother's name is Rhonda. I want to be fair about Rhonda because I think fairness matters even when it's hard. She is not a cartoon villain. She's a 62-year-old woman who raised 2 kids mostly alone after her husband left, who worked double shifts at a hospital admissions desk for 15 years, and who has a laugh that fills every room she walks into. I liked her when I first met her. I genuinely did. She called me honey and taught me her cornbread recipe and said I was the daughter she always wanted. What I didn't understand then was that Rhonda operates on a very specific logic. Everything she has ever done for someone earns her a debt she can collect later. She doesn't say it out loud. She doesn't hand you an invoice. But the account is always open, and she always knows the balance. Trevor's younger sister is named Amber. Amber is 27, works intermittently as a fitness instructor, and has been engaged 3 times. She is not mean, she is just untethered. Rhonda has spent Amber's entire adult life catching her when she falls, which sounds loving until you realize it means Amber has never learned how to land. We got married in April 2 years ago. Small ceremony. Backyard of Trevor's uncle's house in Westerville, maybe 60 people. It was perfect. Rhonda cried during the vows and hugged me for a long time afterward, and I thought, this is going to be okay. This is going to be a good family. 6 months after the wedding, Amber's 3rd engagement ended. Her fiancé, a guy none of us particularly trusted, left and took both cats and most of the furniture. Amber called Trevor at 11 on a Tuesday night, sobbing. I was half asleep next to him and heard the whole thing. He talked her down. He always did. What happened over the next year was gradual enough that I almost didn't see it happening. Rhonda started calling Trevor more. Then more. Then she started texting me directly with updates about Amber, as if I had signed up to be part of a care team. She started showing up unannounced on Saturdays. Once I came home from the grocery store and found her sitting at our kitchen table, and Trevor was at work and she had used the spare key we'd given her for emergencies. I told Trevor that the spare key was for emergencies. He said, "She gets lonely." I said, "That's not what the key is for." He said he'd talk to her. He didn't. Then came a conversation that started everything. It was last October. Trevor and I had just crossed $84,000 in savings. We had an appointment with a mortgage broker the following week. We'd been pre-qualified pending a full application, and we had a neighborhood picked out, a quiet street in Grandview Heights, close to the park, good schools for someday. I had a folder on my desktop with listings. I opened it almost every night. Rhonda came over for dinner that Sunday. I made pot roast and she brought a peach cobbler, and it was a perfectly nice evening until after dessert when she said, casually, as if she were mentioning the weather, that Amber had found a place. I said that was great news. Rhonda said, she just needs the security deposit and first and last month's rent, and some furniture, and to get her car fixed. The table went quiet. I looked at Trevor. Trevor looked at his mother. How much are we talking? He asked. Rhonda had a number ready. Of course she did. $12,000? I put my fork down. I want to describe what I felt in that moment, because it wasn't just the number. It wasn't even about the money. Not really. Not yet. It was the way she said it. The way she had come into my house and eaten my food and waited until the warm, comfortable part of the evening to present a bill, it was the casualness of it. Like she'd been carrying the number around all day waiting for the right moment to set it on the table between the peach cobbler and our future. I said as calmly as I could that Trevor and I would need to talk about it privately. Rhonda said, "Of course, honey," and smiled at me, and I felt the temperature in the room drop 3 degrees. After she left, Trevor and I were up until 1 in the morning. He said it was his family and he felt responsible. I said I understood that. And also we had a mortgage appointment in 7 days and $12,000 was not nothing. He said maybe we could give her 5 and she could find the rest. I said, where would she find the rest? He didn't have an answer. We went to bed without deciding. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, I transferred our savings into a separate account. One I had opened individually, not jointly. I know how that sounds. I know some people reading this will think that was the wrong move, that it was a sign of distrust. Maybe it was. But I had a feeling, the kind of feeling that lives in your chest and doesn't use words, that I needed to put a wall between that money and what was coming. I told Trevor I had done it. He went very quiet and said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I want us to be able to buy that house." He didn't fight me on it. I think part of him understood. What I didn't know was that there was already a problem I hadn't seen yet. 3 weeks later, I was reconciling our joint checking account, the one we used for regular expenses, and I noticed withdrawals I didn't recognize. Not huge ones, $200 here, $350 there, one for $800. Over the course of about 11 days, starting 2 days before the Sunday dinner with Rhonda, a total of $4,200 had left our account in increments small enough to avoid triggering an automatic alert. I sat at my desk for a long time before I picked up my phone. I called Trevor and I read him the transactions. He was silent for so long, I thought the call had dropped. "I'll call you back," he said. He called back 40 minutes later. His voice was different, flat in a way I'd never heard from him. "She had my debit card information," he said, "from when I helped her pay a bill last year. I didn't cancel it out of her records." Rhonda had used Trevor's card details to make purchases. Some were direct. She had apparently used the card number for online orders. One was a wire to a furniture store account. She had not asked. She had not mentioned it. She had come to our house for pot roast and cobbler, while 11 days of withdrawals were already sitting in our account history. I have replayed what I did next many times, and I do not regret any of it. I called my firm. I'm a paralegal, not an attorney, but I know how to draft a demand letter and I know which attorneys at my firm handle civil matters. I sat down with one of them the next morning off the clock as a personal consultation. We went through everything. The unauthorized use of account information, the amounts, the dates. He used the words unauthorized electronic funds transfer and potential wire fraud. He said these were serious terms and I should understand their weight. I understood their weight. Trevor, to his enormous credit, did not defend his mother. He was devastated and he was angry, and he called her that night with me sitting next to him. He put it on speaker and she answered on the second ring, and before he could finish his first sentence, she started crying. Rhonda said she was going to pay it back. She said Amber was in a bad place and she panicked. She said she knew it was wrong and she was ashamed and she would never have done it if she thought it would hurt us. She said she loved me like a daughter. I let Trevor handle that call. I sat on the couch and looked at the wall, and I did not say anything because I did not trust what I would say. What I did do was have my attorney send a formal demand letter the following day, itemized. Total amount, dates, a request for repayment within 30 days, and a clear statement that failure to comply would result in filing a civil claim and a report to the local prosecutor's office for review. Rhonda called me the next day and asked me if I was really going to destroy the family over $4,200. She was not crying this time. I said I wasn't destroying anything. I said someone had taken money from our account without permission and I expected it to be returned. She said, "Trevor is fine with working this out." I said, "Trevor and I are not separate on this." She said, "You've never liked me." I said, "I want our money back." I want to pause here and acknowledge something because the comment sections of stories like mine are always full of people asking why the wife stayed quiet for so long, why she didn't draw a harder line earlier, whether she was weak or a pushover or complicit. I hear that. I understand why people ask it. But I think there is a difference between being a pushover and choosing your battles carefully when you have legally entered a family and you love your husband and you are trying to build something that lasts. I had let things go that I should not have let go. The spare key, the Sunday dinners that became every Sunday, the calls at 11 at night. I let those things go because Trevor is worth it and because I believed, honestly believed, that Rhonda and I could find a livable equilibrium. But there is no equilibrium available when someone goes into your bank account while you're making them dinner. The 30 days passed. We received $1,500. A handwritten note from Rhonda said the rest was coming soon. It did not come. We filed the civil claim. I will not pretend this was easy for Trevor. I watched him go through something that didn't have a good name. Not quite grief, not quite anger, something in between. Something that happens when a person you love does something that makes you see them differently, and you can't unsee it. He called his mother twice during those weeks. Both calls ended badly. His sister called him and said he was being cruel and that family doesn't sue family. He told her, quietly, that family doesn't steal from family either. She hung up on him. The hearing was set for February. In the meantime, we went ahead with the mortgage process. I had moved quickly enough that our main savings was untouched. The missing $4,200 hurt. It was money that had taken months to save, but it did not stop us. We submitted our application in November. We got our approval letter on a Thursday afternoon, and I cried in the parking lot of the grocery store, just sat in my car and cried, because it was real and it was ours, and no one had taken it. We closed on the house in January, a 3-bedroom in Grandview Heights, 3 blocks from the park, a kitchen with a window above the sink. Trevor carried me over the threshold and put me down in the empty living room, and we stood there in our coats looking at the bare walls, and he said, "We did it." And I thought yes, but I also thought about everything it had cost to get here and how different that felt from how I had imagined it. The civil hearing was on a Tuesday in February. Rhonda came with Amber, who apparently could not be separated from her even for a courthouse appearance. My attorney spoke clearly and briefly. He presented the bank records, the account access logs, and the demand letter with its documented non-response. Rhonda's position, presented by a family friend who was not an attorney and who I think did her more harm than good, was that it was a family matter that had been blown out of proportion and that she had intended to repay the full amount. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with the energy of someone who had heard this exact story before, looked at Rhonda over her glasses and asked her when, specifically, she had planned to complete repayment. Rhonda did not have a specific answer. The judge ruled in our favor, full amount plus court filing fees. Rhonda had 60 days to pay or face additional enforcement action. What happened in the parking lot after the ruling was the part I was not prepared for. Amber came up to me while Trevor was speaking to my attorney. She was not yelling. Her voice was actually very calm, and that somehow made it worse. She said that I had humiliated their family in front of a judge over pocket change, that Trevor was only doing this because I controlled him, and that I had never been a real part of this family, and now I never would be. I looked at her for a moment, and then I said, as evenly as I could manage, that $4,200 is not pocket change to people who earn it honestly, and that I hoped things got better for her, and I walked to our car. Trevor had heard part of it. He put his hand on my back and said, "Let's go home." That night we sat on the floor of our new living room. We didn't have furniture yet, just a blanket and takeout boxes. And Trevor said something I have thought about a lot since. He said, "I'm sorry it took something this big for me to see it clearly." I didn't say anything for a minute. Then I said that I didn't need an apology. I needed him to understand that it wasn't about choosing between me and his family. It was about whether he believed I was his family too. He said, "You're my family. You're my first family." I'm not going to pretend that fixed everything overnight. These things don't fix overnight. We went to 3 sessions of couples counseling because I needed to say some things out loud in a room with a professional, and Trevor needed to hear them without going defensive. It helped. We're okay. We're more than okay, actually. We're the kind of okay that's been earned, which is different from the kind that was just never tested. Rhonda paid the full amount in a single payment on day 58 of 60. I don't know where she got it. I didn't ask. Trevor texted her a brief acknowledgement. She did not respond. We have not seen her since the hearing. Trevor has spoken to her twice on the phone, brief, civil, about nothing important. She has not asked to visit. I think she knows that the spare key she used to walk into our kitchen is gone. We changed the locks when we moved, which was practical anyway, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't something deliberate in it. I sometimes think about the version of this where I had not moved that money, where I had trusted the good feeling at the dinner table and gone to bed with our savings still in the joint account. 11 days, $84,200 at risk. A woman who had both a key to our house and, it turned out, our card information saved on her phone. I don't let myself sit in that version very long because it makes me feel a fear I don't know what to do with. What I do know is this: I did not destroy this family. I protected mine. Amber posted something on Instagram about 6 weeks after the hearing, a quote graphic about how blood is always thicker than water, and those who weren't there when you were building won't be there when you're standing. I didn't respond. I didn't show Trevor. I just set my phone face down on the counter and went back to painting the kitchen, which is a soft yellow, the color of light in the morning, exactly the color I picked for exactly this room in this house that we built carefully and kept. Rhonda has not met our dog. We got a dog in March, a 3-year-old rescue beagle named Waffles, who has decided that the armchair by the front window is his throne and will not be persuaded otherwise. The house smells like coffee in the mornings and whatever Trevor is making for dinner, and on weekends we walk to the park 3 blocks away and come back through the neighborhood we chose, past the house we own, and sometimes I still have to remind myself that it's real. It is real. We earned it, and no one is ever getting the code to that lockbox. I still think about that Sunday dinner sometimes, the pot roast, the peach cobbler, the way Rhonda laughed at something Trevor said right before she told us what she needed. There was nothing in her face that looked like guilt, and I've spent a long time trying to figure out what that means. Not about her, but about what I was willing to see and what I wasn't. The truth is, the $4,200 was almost not the point. The point was the pattern that had been building for years. The spare key used on a Tuesday afternoon, the late-night calls, the dinners that weren't really dinners, but collection visits dressed up in cobbler and warmth. I had watched it accumulate and told myself it was manageable. That's not stupidity, but it is a failure to trust what you already know, and that failure has a cost. What I learned, slowly, in the months after the hearing, is that doing the right thing and doing the easy thing almost never occupy the same space. Sending that demand letter was not easy. Sitting next to Trevor while he called his mother and hearing her cry was not easy. Walking into that courthouse knowing Amber was going to be there staring at me like I had done something unforgivable, none of it was easy. But easy and right are different words for a reason. I think about integrity a lot now, not as an abstract virtue, but as something structural. The way a house needs load-bearing walls, a person needs a line they won't cross regardless of who's asking them to cross it. Trevor found his line later than I would have liked, but he found it. He stood in it, and that matters more to me than the timing. What I also learned is that clarity is its own form of strength. When I moved that money before the dinner, I wasn't being paranoid or cold. I was paying attention. I was using information I already had, years of it, and I was acting on it instead of explaining it away. Intelligence isn't just what you know, it's whether you let yourself use what you know when the stakes are real. And then there's the staying power, the part where you don't collapse, where you go to couples counseling and say the hard things out loud and then go home and paint the kitchen yellow and walk your ridiculous beagle to the park and keep building. Rhonda paid on day 58 of 60. She waited until the last possible moment, which told me everything I needed to know about where we stood. I didn't respond with anger. I responded by changing the locks, updating the account access, and making Trevor's favorite dinner that night. Some people will read this and think I was too hard. Some will think I wasn't hard enough. I've made peace with both of those readings. What I know is that the house is real. The yellow kitchen is real. Trevor sang, "You're my first family" on the floor of an empty living room. That's real. You don't get to those things by shrinking or by pretending you didn't see what you saw. You get there by being honest, by thinking clearly, and by refusing to stop building just because someone tried to take the materials. Waffles is asleep in the armchair by the window. The mortgage payment came out of our account this morning, exactly as it was supposed to. That's enough.